I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. It is actually Friday this time, even though I thought it was Friday 3 days ago. We have finally made it to Friday. We are turning the page. Exactly 1 week from tonight, we will know where some of these big-time rookies have landed because the first round will be in the books. The second and third rounds will just about be kicking off. We are getting closer. So as promised, today and on Tuesday, we are going to have all of our focus on rookies and getting ready for the draft. That means Dennis and I will be looking at our top 10 quarterbacks, our top 10 running backs going into the draft. And we are just about done with a 4-round Superflex mock that will be thrown up there. There's actually some news going on. Dennis, it feels like football is upon us.
Man, mini camps, off-season voluntary workouts have started, so we're getting a little bit of news out of there. It just feels like if you're gonna be in business, and you need to figure out like what the NFL has created, taken what used to be like, I'm old enough to remember like a 12-week season. They've expanded a 12-week season into a 52-week entity over the past 50 years. And it has just been phenomenal. It's so big. Like, I'm disappointed that I mean, disappointed is probably a strong word, because instead of going to the draft in Detroit, I'm going up to New York to Chateau de Nerd for our annual Dynasty Nerds meeting. So that's going to be a ton of fun. We always have a great time there. We get a lot of work done, kind of plan our year. We got big things coming with the Dynasty GM, and it's just really, I'm scheduling rookie drafts, and I'm at that point where I look at it and I go, well, I should probably schedule some like in July so that because
fortunately, like, I was pleasantly surprised. It feels like every year you put the poll up when you're in a league and it's like you want to do May, June, or July, and everybody and their brother puts May. I have a healthy number that asks for June and a healthy number that asks for July. So, but I do have quite a few going in May. When is your first rookie draft currently scheduled to kick off?
Next Sunday, a week from Sunday.
Wow. Mine is May 2nd. So that's the first one that's in the book. So we'll be kicking off the draft, and then I will be taking a road trip to some kind of quilting mecca with my wife. So, at least I'll have something to keep me going.
You got to do what you got to do. I mean,
yeah,
I've been renovating the kitchen since February 18th, and backsplash went up today. I think the hood may go up this weekend or Monday. Flooring is in, countertops are in, and we're so close. Here's the I love my wife more than I hate this idea thing that I'm working with right now. My wife wants to do murals on the inside of the pantry walls. So we just added a walk-in pantry. And I'm like, what the fuck do we need murals on the walls when we're going to just stack food in front of them? That's what my head said.
You have to add to the aesthetic.
Come out of my mouth because, I like where I sleep and who I sleep with. So
and being physically intact.
Right. So I'm like, you and Melinda put the murals in there, knock yourselves out. I want it to look cute when the door is open. look, you're going to bitch every time somebody leaves that barn door open. So I didn't say that. I thought it because I love my wife more than I hate this process.
Well, we have a few pieces of news, and the first one I have to admit caught me a little by surprise after a couple of weeks of bandying about the near imminent reunion of Ezekiel Elliott and the Dallas Cowboys. They went out and signed Royce Freeman. So now they are heading into the draft with Rico Dowdle, Deuce Vaughn, and Royce Freeman on the, I would think you probably feel the same, that they are still likely to draft a running back. Do you think this rules out Zeke? Do you think they add all of it? I mean, I have to be honest, Royce Freeman looked okay, I guess, for the Rams last year, but this does not move the needle for me.
Royce Freeman looked so good that the Rams went out and signed Darrell Henderson off his couch. So it feels it's somewhere between RB4 and Camp Body. I don't know that he's going to be able to beat out Rico Dowdle. Vaughn is he's going to have his role.
Special teams.
So they could still bring in Zeke. They could still.
I think they're certainly going to draft somewhere. Yeah. The other one, another team that has been strongly rumored to be looking at drafting a running back is the Los Angeles Chargers. We know they brought in Gus Edwards. They have Isaiah Spiller, potentially. Could they be using him? They had kicked the tires with J.K. Dobbins. Then he went over to Kansas City, who kicked the tires and promptly signed Clyde Edwards-Helaire back. He ends up signing a one-year deal. Is going to be familiar with the Greg Roman scheme. Going to be familiar with Gus Edwards, who I think is currently still the lead back. What do you think of the signing? Do you think it precludes them from also drafting another running back?
Well, first off, J.K. Dobbins' tires have been tore up in his 4-year career. Nobody should be kicking J.K. Dobbins' tires. So I think it feels like John Harbaugh saying, man, this kid hasn't been able to catch a break. If you've got a spot, Jim, do me a solid, do him a solid, give him a shot to work his way back. We're seeing players, running backs specifically, start to work their way back from Achilles injuries and be able to play. Most notably, Deontay Foreman, Cam Akers came back and was able to play. It used to be a death knell, but if you remember 40 years ago, an ACL was the same way. So medicine may be improving. Will Dobbins ever have the lateral agility that he had when he came into the league? Probably not after an ACL tear and an Achilles tear. Could he still be a decent running back? He's probably never going to reach that potential that he had, but he could be a guy that hangs around for 5 or 6 years. He could be, I don't know about Gus Edwards, but he could be a Latavius Murray, one of these guys that, gets a 1-year, 2-year deal here or there, is able to contribute better for football than he is for fantasy. But a year from now, if the recovery goes well and he continues to progress, may very well be an opportunity for him to, be a more than minimum contract running back for a couple years.
Yeah, I mean, I think this gives me some interest in rostering him. We'll see. It's a 1-year deal, so nothing too big of a commitment. I also still think the Chargers end up taking a running back. Because I think they're remaking. What I really think this tells me is the hope that I had that maybe this was a good sign for Isaiah Spiller to get some run is dissipating rapidly, because now you're talking Edwards, Dobbins. If they go take a rookie in the 3rd or the 4th round, which I think is eminently possible, including, what if they get Harbaugh's guy Blake Corum, somewhere in there, Isaiah Spiller may not even be on a roster.
If we're being real, Blake Corum's just little Gus Edwards.
I know, but I mean, he's familiar with him. I think this is a bad sign for Isaiah Spiller. is all I'm saying, or for the faint hope that I had that maybe at some point, when he went to the Chargers, we thought it wasn't a terrible, he went around the same range as Damian Pierce, who's gotten some opportunities to do something, but Spiller must be a lot worse than we realized.
A lot slower. Apparently that 40 time wasn't fake.
The other kind of piece of news, Zay Flowers had some charges earlier. They ended up getting dropped. The NFL comes out and says there isn't enough evidence to warrant any kind of punishment, so he won't face punishment from that. Breathing a sigh of relief there.
I don't know. Hopefully it's not it's not starting to establish a pattern. If he puts his nose to the grindstone, starts to stay out of trouble, and just does the work, then I like that. I like the talent. He's the number one wide receiver on a low volume passing team with a narrow funnel. He's the number 2 option behind Mark Andrews. So for me, I look at it and think, good, get your shit together. Hopefully he looks around the league and he sees Rashee Rice and some of these other things going, and he's like, I got to clean myself up. I got to make better decisions. Let's get back to football. So should I go Malik Washington or Cade Stover with my last pick?
I guess it kind of depends. I'm going to be honest, when we get to
Jermaine Burton too.
When we get to doing our mock draft, I'm going to tell you I actually pulled up one of my actual teams and used that as if I was drafting out of the spot, which is essentially, I made a mistake. I thought I was pick 8 and pick 9, but essentially the right spot and the right roster. I used that to try to give myself a real life scenario. All right. Well, before we go to the mock draft, let's talk rookies for a minute. We're going to start giving out our rankings. We'll do receivers and tight ends on Tuesday, but today going to look at quarterbacks and at running backs. So which do you want to start with?
I don't care.
Well, why don't we start with running backs, because that might be a little less exciting. And why don't you give me your top 10 at running back pre-draft?
So I've got 8 guys tied at 10. No. So right now I've got Bucky Irving at 10. I think Irving.
Your numbers are screwed up. Let me.
Oh, wait. They are.
There you go.
There we go. I've got Imani Bailey at 10. I'm really close to. Bailey's a small pass catching back. Potentially, I'm looking at maybe moving Audric Estime or Rasheen Ali or Jace McClellan up. Draft capital could have some impact on this. But with this class, the later backs, you're going to be looking for somebody that can provide 6 points a game. And the easiest way to 6 points a game is going to be through catching a couple passes. So I think Imani Bailey is suited for that. That's kind of what he did in college. He was at TCU. He did run the ball some. At 9, again, same thing. You're going to see a trend with these first few. I got Bucky Irving. I know he's another Oregon running back, carried the ball a lot in college, but really he's a receiving back, not a big guy, another 5'9", 200-pounder, 195-pounder. These guys are all going to have to figure out, can they work in pass protection? Because I know we love to talk about, they're a third down back, they're going to catch a lot of balls. But the best third down backs are in there because they can block as well. And these first three guys, they're going to need to put their ass into it when they're blocking because they're all smaller guys. At number 8, I got Ray Davis. I love Ray Davis. Clearly not as much as you do. But we had him on our show several years ago when he was still at Temple. Small guy. Again, he's one of those guys. I could see Ray Davis coming in and being a 50 catch a year guy. He's sturdy. He's I think what is he, 207, I think. He's a solid
211.
211 at 5'8". He's rocked up. He'll get you some carries too. And we've seen it before with some of these small, stocky guys that they can carry the load on the ground as well. The downside with Davis is he's older. He played 6 years of college, 5 years of college.
5 years of college. Yeah.
So he played in the SEC for the last 2 or 3 years of his career. So he's went up against some good competition. At 7, I got Will Shipley. So after his freshman year, Will Shipley was everybody's All-American. Everybody loved Will Shipley. And he kind of peaked early in his college career. But he stayed pretty steady. Clemson's been a good football team. Yeah, he shared the ball with Phil Maffa last year, maybe the year before. But Shipley is he's like the bigger version of these first 3 backs. 5'11", 207 pounds. He can run the ball. He can catch the ball. Shipley, when we get to the mock draft, I drafted Shipley. I was really hoping to see how far he would fall. It was between him and Davis, and I was torn. They were both there. I really wanted to draft Ray Davis, but I got Shipley ahead of him, and so I went with Shipley. At number 5, I got Braylon Allen. Maybe too high on him. He has a particular style. He's going to have to land in the right spot. If he gets Dameon Pierced and they put him in an offense that doesn't suit what he does, it could be a complete and utter waste and nightmare. However, he's 20 years old. Dude's leaving. He's young. He completed 3 years. The numbers changed a ton for him last year because the offense changed. Luke Fickell came in, and they completely changed that offense. I think Braylon Allen is still a good back. He's a build-up back. He's not quick. He's got good feet, but he isn't quick. He has decent speed, lots of power, 238 pounds, 6'3", 6'2". He's a big bruising back that can carry the load. Because he's big, he's going to get compared to Derrick Henry. I don't think he doesn't have Derrick Henry type of speed. I don't think. But he is a big back, and I don't think he has Henry's power. So, but I do like Braylon Allen. I think he's somebody that can carve out a role. He could be Najee Harris plus. That's sort of how I see Braylon Allen. 5, I got Jalen Wright. I like Jalen Wright. He ended up, he's got really good speed. If he gets in the open field, he's going to run away from people. What did he post? Let's see, 25.4% explosive runs. So 25% of his runs went for over 10 yards. Can get a little squirrely when he has to change direction, but he can stay up to speed and drag tacklers around. Has a little fumbling issue, so he's going to need to work that out. His vision is questionable. At 4, my thing with I got Blake Corum at 4. I got to be honest. I feel like Corum is going to be a guy that's overdrafted back that catches the. He feels like a kind of a mini Derrick Henry. He's a guy whose best skill set is early down work running the ball, but he's in a little teeny tiny body. Maybe he can improve on third down. There's no question about his desire to be good. I've seen him here against Ohio State. he's not a bad back. I just feel like it's an old school skill set that may not necessarily be the best fit. I know a lot of mock drafts like to put him in Los Angeles with Jim Harbaugh, but I think we've seen lots of times where college coaches go to the NFL and we're all like, "Oh, he's going to draft his guy," and they just don't. So I'm not really into that. Number 3, I got Marshawn Lloyd. I've seen him ranked as high as 1 for some people. He's a solid running back. Runs low with good power. Has good lateral movement and a decent stiff arm. I think that he's a guy that I could see him being the best back in this class. I don't when I look, that would mean a couple guys underperform a little bit, but I think he's an NFL talent. I think he lands in the right spot, gets an opportunity to, maybe be in a timeshare this year and then move into the lead role in 2024. That seems, or 2025. That seems like an ideal thing for Marshawn Lloyd. Number 2, I got Jonathan Brooks, another good size back. It's nice at the top of the, aside from Blake Corum, these top few backs, top 5 of the top 6, all have real good size. Brooks is coming off a knee injury, so that will take some time. You're projecting a lot how he goes through rehab. Only had 238 carries in college, so if you're a believer in how much tread he has left on his tires, he's got a lot more left than, say, Braylon Allen. I like the ability of Jonathan Brooks to not take unnecessary hits, but he can finish if that's what the situation calls for. Good after the catch move, can handle, the receiving game. Could be set up to be a 3-down back, as much as teams use 3-down backs anymore. Jonathan Brooks is looking like he could be that guy. And at number 1, I got Trey Benson. Good. He's got an NFL running back body, good bend and lateral agility, keeps his pads low, runs with balance through contact. Somebody that, so when we get to this mock draft, it was really, there were guys I was looking at, and ultimately, because we did a super flex, that's why I went with the pick that I did. But if it hadn't been a quarterback, I do think that Benson probably would have been my pick.
Yeah. So I'll go through mine, and I will say I feel like of all the positions kind of in this rookie group, running back to me feels like the one that I might rearrange the most depending on where they go and what their opportunities and where they end up going in the draft. And I feel like it's kind of you've mentioned you see guy, I've seen him as high as 1, I've seen him as low as 10. That's like all across the board. It feels like a real kind of fungible. There's a few guys that seem to have separated themselves as being somewhat on the top, and then there's a real like soft everyone else. So at 10, I do have Audric Estime. You mentioned having him potentially, just right down there. I did pull him up in there. I have Bucky Irving in 9, same as you. Then I have Will Shipley, Jalen Wright.
How do you hate Will Shipley, man?
I mean, I think he's okay. That's the thing. It's hard to tell how good. I don't know how good Clemson was either the last couple of years. And then you mentioned I do have I have Ray Davis at 6. He had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons there at Kentucky in the rookie guide that Campus to Canton put out, those guys, who went and scouted at the Senior Bowl, they actually have him as their running back 4. ESPN actually, I think, has him as like running back 3 or 4. It's just so hard to tell, but a great senior season at Kentucky, 199 carries, got 1129 yards, 14 touchdowns, 33 receptions, 323 yards, and 7 more touchdowns. I mean, Kentucky's a decent squad, and like you mentioned, is in the SEC. It's sometimes hard to tell. I do have a soft spot, right? Because we talked to him, and I have Blake Corum at 5. I've made jokes about him ending up with the Chargers. Who knows? I mean, I think the Chargers will take someone, but how is it going to fall? I'm a little higher, I guess, on Braylon Allen than you, but not as high as in the Campus to Canton team actually has him as RB1. And I've been kind of fascinated. I've heard some people make some pitches, and it just, then I had Marshawn Lloyd at 3, Jonathan Brooks at 2, and Trey Benson at 1, kind of similar to you. But I don't think any arrangement of drafting would totally surprise me at this point in time. There's some, I've seen some of the guys on ESPN that are really high on Isaac Guerendo, even though like college production isn't incredible. But sometimes these teams see something and they go and they grab somebody. And I feel like we've already talked about running back seems to be a position where nearly everyone is in some kind of a committee. And so you're just looking for somebody that gets a chance. I have to be honest, whichever running back Dallas takes in round 2, and I think that's happening, is probably the guy I'm going to end up having at 1. I think it could be Trey Benson, could be Jonathan Brooks, who we have kind of up there anyway. But that to me is like the greatest opportunity in a good offense. If the Cardinals go and grab somebody in the 2nd or 3rd round, I'm going to take a hard look at that too, because I'm not sold on anything behind James Conner. And we know James Conner has missed time. So, I mean, I'm looking at where are they going to land, where they, last year we had 2 guys that we felt like were the cream of the crop, and we're going to stay there no matter where they went. And they went to good, decent locations, but Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs were going to be 1-2. It didn't really, I don't feel that way about running backs.
No, I got to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if only 6 or 7 get drafted. I could see teams drafting, that wouldn't be the real comp. I could see teams drafting 3 or 4 fullbacks or H-backs that they're going to play in that role, along with 6 or 7 of these guys here.
Well, and a sneaky one for me to watch, I don't think Sean Payton is sold on anyone he has. And if Denver uses a 3rd round pick on a running back, that's a guy to watch.
So a guy that I've been hearing lately is Tyrone Tracy. I was listening to John Hansen, and was it Brett Whitefield maybe was in talking. Tracy is he's a versatile back, played receiver and running back, good movement, is able to change direction, has real good speed. Because he didn't play a ton of running back, he's still kind of learning the position, but he's got decent size. I don't know. It's a weird group this year, man.
Well, let's move to quarterback, which we expect a lot of them are going to be going by this time next week. I would think at least 4 will have gone. It's possible as many as 6 could go in the 1st round, just depending on how pressed teams are feeling. So why don't you give us your top 10?
So at 10, I got Michael Pratt. It's really there's a big group at the top, and then a couple in the middle, and then after that, they're really barely backup quality quarterbacks. Pratt is a guy that maybe profiles as Colt McCoy comes to mind, but McCoy was probably overdrafted. He was a 4-year starter, 3-year team captain. He was consistent over his college career. Good feet, alters his touch, so he throws the ball with a nice touch. Doesn't have great timing, and if he has to throw across the field, the deep outs, he doesn't really have the arm for that. But he's somebody like I could see. I know who did the Rams sign to back up?
Jimmy G.
Yeah, Pratt is a guy that I could see them bringing in as a developmental to be the backup to whoever their next quarterback is. At 10 is a guy that you probably saw me moving players around as we were talking through the open. I'm not necessarily high on Joe Milton's quarterbacking talent, but he's got things you just can't teach. He's 6'5", 250 pounds, with a big old arm. Like, he can throw it a country mile, and good mobility. It's one of those guys that somebody's going to draft just to see if they can make him into an NFL quarterback. I don't know if they can, but he's got with his arm strength, he's going to get an opportunity. Now, the question is going to be, can he throw with touch when he needs to, or is everything going to be, Nolan Ryan high heater? He keeps his eyes downfield. We've seen that with guys like Ben Roethlisberger. He was a 6'5", 240-pound guy. Those big guys, Josh Allen, they're not worried about getting hit because they feel like they can shake it off. So his ability to withstand the rush and be able to move away from it. But again, reiterating, he doesn't have great ball placement or great timing. He's going to need to really work on that. In number 8, I got Jordan Travis. I'm torn because did Keon Coleman circus catches make Jordan Travis? Or is Jordan Travis, were they circus catches because they were awful throws and Coleman turned them into completions? He's got decent enough arm strength, a good throwing motion, generally accurate. He has some mobility, but he's coming off a leg injury, so he wasn't able to work out. We'll have to see, can he put together the things that an NFL quarterback has to do, reading the defense in time, put the ball on the receivers where they need it to be in the NFL. A lot of those circus catches Keon Coleman made going to be interceptions in the NFL. I like the talent. I really wish he hadn't gotten hurt because he was on quite a roll. Number 7, I got Spencer Rattler. Rattler is an interesting story in perseverance. He came in, he was on the TV show in high school going into college, which I think kind of went to his head. And he went into Oklahoma maybe thinking he was better than he was and didn't have to work as hard as he needed to become a college quarterback. Ended up moving on, finished his career at South Carolina. Good arm, okay size. He's shade over 6 foot, 211. Can read the field okay. Really has a surprisingly good arm for somebody that's his size. I'd like to see, he's one of those guys you've got the top tier, then you've got a couple other guys, and then Rattler is kind of in the next tier by himself. I don't know that I would put Travis or Milton or Pratt in the same tier with Rattler, but I don't think I would put Rattler up with Nix or Penix either. So he feels like he's in a tier by himself. Number 6, we disagree on Bo Nix a little bit. Not a lot, a little. And it's troubling that 30% of Bo Nix's throws last year were behind the line of scrimmage. And when I'm looking at Penix and Nix and trying to figure out how to like which hair am I splitting to decide who goes first? I'm going to go with the gunslinger, which is Penix. Knicks had good wide receivers, a couple guys that are going to get drafted too. Penix had good wide receivers, a couple guys that are going to get drafted. You're really splitting hairs with the two of them. Penix has a much longer injury history. Both of them stayed in college forever. They've got a ton of snaps. But what we've seen with guys like Brock Purdy is there's nothing wrong with getting a shit ton of experience in college and taking it to the NFL. Does that mean, you peaked early and you didn't get better? Maybe, but damn, quarterback is a hard position. So I've got Knicks at 6. I got Penix at 5. I think I think Penix is a little more of a gunslinger, and that's something that if I'm going to go for a quarterback outside those top 4, Penix is the guy for me. JJ McCarthy at number 4. I had him higher, and he was one of the guys I was moving around. And ultimately, what it came down to is, has Drake May impressed during this pre-draft process? No. But did he get worse at the quarterback position during the pre-draft process? No. He's still 2 or 3. JJ McCarthy, to me, I've got McCarthy at 4, and I feel like that's where I'm going to hold him. He may get drafted ahead of a couple guys ahead of him. I think that's going to be an overdraft. To me, McCarthy is like Alex Smith. I think he's competent. I think he'll be okay for fantasy some years, middling QB2 or a little bit lower other years. A lot of it's going to come down to can he be productive? We saw Michigan limit his touches, and I get it. We can say, oh, well, they wanted to feature the running game because it was so strong or whatnot. But, you don't limit your good guys. Number 3, I got Drake May. This one really is kind of contingent on how Daniels and May land. It feels like Daniels is going to go earlier. I got him at 2. Feels like Daniels is going to go to Washington. He's the type of quarterback that fits Cliff Kingsbury's system the best. And May, he's a good quarterback, but prototypical quarterback size. It'd be awesome if somebody that's good with quarterbacks traded up to 3 and gave Drake May a fighting chance. I'm hoping for the best from Gerard Mayo and the new look Patriots, but they're in a deep, deep, deep rebuild. And, you got to take your quarterback when you get your shot, but it may not be great for May. Jaden Daniels at 2, like I said, seems like he's tailor-made to run Cliff Kingsbury's offense. Probably the overarching concern is we saw what happened to a skinny-ass quarterback in Washington before, and Jaden Daniels is a skinny-ass quarterback. And, hopefully he doesn't fall prey to the Robert Griffin, get his legs tore out from under him. But I think Daniels will be okay. High percentage passer, good size, good arm, makes good decisions. He's going in. He's got a couple good receivers in Terry McLaurin and not De'Ami Brown, who's Jahan Dotson. Austin Eckler's there with Brian Robinson. You're muted. And at 1, obviously, Caleb Williams. It reminds me of the old days when before the rookie salary cap, when the team at 101 would basically start to negotiate with their pick, and the draft really started at the 102. We know they're going Caleb Williams. They're going to draft him. They traded for Keenan Allen and Gerald Everett signed there. Maybe did they trade? And he signed there.
No, Gerald Everett went to Chicago. Yeah.
Right. So, and so did Keenan Allen. With DJ Moore, they signed DeAndre Swift. They got Cole Kmet. I know we keep seeing mock drafts with the Bears taking a wide receiver with their second first round pick, but it feels so much like they need to take a offensive lineman to, set Caleb Williams up.
What you should do and what you do are two separate things. I couldn't find my mute button, but you're right. De'Ami Brown is still in Washington. I think right now he's currently listed as their wide receiver 4. They have Jamison Crowder also. Not that it matters that much.
I want Brown over Crowder.
I don't want either of them. So for me, I have Jordan Travis at 10. He was having a decent year for Florida State before he got injured. And then I have Pratt at 9, but I've seen some people higher on him than even like Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler. It's hard for me to tell. And Milton, I have at 8. Those are probably guys, if I'm at the end of my draft and I saw them go to an NFL team that there's potential, I might take a flyer on them, but those guys feel more like they're going to end up in backup territory to me. I kind of agree with you about Spencer Rattler. It's hard to know. He's my 7. It's hard to know whether he really is in a tier with Nix and Penix or whether he's kind of by himself. Reports have varied wildly too, about like where I've seen even some of the chatter here, Denver might just wait and see if he's still sitting there in the 4th round and take a quarterback there if they're not going to go anywhere early, in which case, he's competing against Ben DiNucci and Jarrett Stidham. So does that make it more interesting? Who's to say? I have Penix at 6. It feels like, I guess, and I have Nix at 5. The reason I have them that way is it feels like when you're looking at people have gone either way. Michael Penix, obviously older, had enrolled, his first year of college was 2018. And we've seen sometimes older quarterbacks not do quite as well. He's also left-handed. Sometimes I wonder, if you mentioned people don't always know what to do with that. It feels like NFL teams or people that are doing scouting feel like Bo Nix is the next one to go after that top 4. And that's why I have him at 5, because I think he might end up getting drafted into a better situation. But I wouldn't be surprised if in the final accounting, those two guys, if I end up flipping them around, depending on where they end up landing. But it's kind of how I feel about the guys at the top 4. Caleb Williams, I think, is going to be 1 no matter what. And we know he's going to Chicago. When I was updating my dynasty ranks the other day, I actually ranked him because I just assume he's going to Chicago. I ranked him as if he was going number 1 to Chicago because I think that's what's going to happen. The other ones, I could see me altering a little bit. Right now I have Daniels at 4, and that's because I think he's going to end up going to the Patriots with pick 3. And I feel bad for whoever ends up going to the Patriots because they don't have a lot around them. I have May at 2. I think it seems like Washington is coming around to wanting to do that. And while we think about Kingsbury having Kyler Murray, he also had Patrick Mahomes. So when he was in college. So he can do different kinds of things. I think it's really going to depend on what they're looking to do. But who Washington takes, if New England stays there or drops back, and if Minnesota or Denver gets up to get the 4th guy, I think has a huge bearing on May, McCarthy, and Daniels, because landing spot, and we've seen how savage that can be in the last, we just looked at quarterback classes from 21, 22, and 23 that went up high, and not going into a good situation was brutal. So we'll see where that ends up. You mentioned that we we did a mock draft, so I'm going to drop that up there right now. It's kind of sleeper to offer for me to convert this into a league. I don't know what kind of league it would be with only 4 players, and interesting set of positions. We did 12-team Superflex, and much as we expect to hear his name called first on next Thursday night, Caleb Williams went 101, Drake May went 102. Then we had Malik Neighbors at 103, Marvin Harrison 104, Jaden Daniels 105, and Rome Odunze at 106. It feels like in Superflex right now, you have these 3 receivers that have kind of separated themselves and quarterbacks that have kind of separated themselves. What do you think of those top 6? Were you at all surprised that Neighbors went right before Harrison?
Yes, I think that's bonkers. Not that I think Neighbors is bad. I just think Marvin Harrison is better. For me, I'm looking at it and trying to figure out, like, how am I going to get what I need out of the draft? I guess if you're looking at Neighbors and thinking he could be the next Justin Jefferson, maybe, I don't know, but Marvin Harrison to me is unquestionably the wide receiver 1 in this class. But I guess get your guy. If you're sold on him, then go get your guy. And that's what Sulfy did, or Sulf1 did.
Liam. So JJ McCarthy goes at 7. Probably not a big shock in Superflex that those 4 quarterbacks who we think could end up being the first 4 picks or the 4 of the first 5 or 6 picks in the draft would go up there. I was sitting at 8, and as I mentioned, I based it off of a real Superflex team I have, and on that particular team, I finished 4th. I'm okay at quarterback. Purdy and Mayfield. I'm pretty decent at running back. I have Hall, David Montgomery, Brian Robinson, and I have a couple other prospects. I have Antonio Gibson, I have Rico Dowell, I have Kendre Miller. But my wide receiver core is terrible. I actually ended the season starting Darius Slayton, Jonathan Mingo, and Cortland Sutton. And then I had Darren Waller at tight end, and we've talked about some of our concerns. So I was kind of wrestling back and forth after those 7. I ended up going with Brock Bowers. I have some high hopes that he's going to land in a decent spot, and I thought that would give me a good pass catcher because I was really focused on kind of hammering pass catchers, trying to give myself an actual scenario to go off of. You were right after me, and you went with Penix. So what kind of were you surprised with where I went, and what went into your choice for Penix?
So I wasn't surprised. So I picked the 9th spot because I feel like there's a clear top 8 in this draft. And while I'm banging on the Neighbors pick, the 8 that went are the top 8. I could have seen Bowers going a couple picks higher, Odunze higher, a couple picks lower. Any number of variations pretty much outside of Caleb Williams, I think is what could have happened. I took 9 because I wanted to see, like, what would happen. Will somebody fall? Is somebody going to fall in love with Brian Thomas or A.D. Mitchell or Xavier Worthy or one of the Bo Nix or Michael Penix, and somebody would fall to me. So I was kind of just testing that to see. And when none of the top 8 fell, I was looking at those 3 wide receivers. I was also toying with the going with a running back there, because I don't think, based on how your team is, and we don't know landing spots, but if one of these running backs lands in Dallas, I don't know that at what am I, 109? Mm-hmm. I don't know that that's a bad pick if you've got a team that's close to competing to take a running back that's going to a good offense with a clear path to opportunity. But in the end, I decided I was going to go with it. It was Superflex, and I was going to go with a quarterback that the other quarterback that I expected, if only 5 quarterbacks go in the first, I feel like Penix is going to be the 5th one.
And then after that, we saw a run of 6 receivers. We mentioned this pretty deep receiver draft. Brian Thomas, Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. Then to start the second round, Ladd McConkey, Jalen McMillan, and Troy Franklin. Any of those guys stand out to you?
No, I think that, the back end of the first with Thomas, Mitchell, and Worthy, the concerns about Worthy are based on, being the top speed guy and that never panning out. Feels like Worthy is actually a better receiver than the other guys who have held that. Mitchell, he's had some issues with effort, but the dude can clearly ball. Brian Thomas, again, another big, strong, fast wide receiver. So those guys are all like who I would expect to be at the back of the first. McConkey is probably the other guy that I think could slide in to the first if somebody isn't high on, the guys that are there, or if Penix doesn't go in the first. McConkey's got okay size. He's just a shade under 6 foot, 200 pounds, and that 6 foot 200 is like turned into the ideal wide receiver size for the current NFL. McConkey provides that. He ran a 4.39, if I remember correctly. Can play inside and outside. Seems like he's ready for the NFL. McMillan and Franklin, both great choices. If I were picking there, I may have went, depending on my team, may very well have went running back over one of those 2 wide receivers. But I think the first 4, Thomas, Mitchell, Worthy, and McConkey, are probably where I'd be going.
All right, and then rounding out the second round, we finally got our first running back at 204, and that was Jonathan Brooks, which, if that's the guy that ends up with Dallas, that's probably a pretty great bargain. Then we had Blake Corum at 5, Trey Benson at 6, Jalen Wright, the 4th running back off the board at 7. As I mentioned, I was thinking about a team where I was really in need of more pass catching help. I considered whether I wanted to go running back, but I went with Xavier Legette because I thought that was the best wide receiver value that was left. Then you got Marshawn Lloyd. We got Keon Coleman after that. Bo Nix, the 6th quarterback, finally going back of the second round. Depending on where he lands, that could be great. And then Colin Decker actually taking Jatavion Sanders, the 2nd tight end, a guy that some people like too. Is there any of the rest of the second round picks that stands out to you?
I like the little stretch of running backs. I think Brooks, Benson, Wright, Marshawn Lloyd, and Blake Corum. I ended up going Lloyd. I've got him, running back 3.
Yep.
So for me, getting my running back 3 at 209 feels like a win. I struggled from this pick on because it's a really good wide receiver draft, but I didn't, because of the picking Penix and then Lloyd, I really wasn't able to dip into any of the elite or high level wide receiver talent. So I was a little sad there, but I really like Marshawn Lloyd. If he lands in Dallas or Arizona, he could be a guy that steps into a role and earns opportunity right out of the gate. So I think Lloyd was a great pick for me at 209, despite, my desire. I looked at Keon Coleman. Ricky Pearsall was a guy that I looked at, was hoping he would fall to me in the 3rd, but alas, he did not.
So in that 3rd round, Javon Baker goes 301. Ricky Pearsall, as you mentioned, goes 302. Then we get Bucky Irving at the 303. Spencer Rattler, the 7th quarterback. Only 8 go in this Superflex draft, which feels about right. But Rattler goes as the 7th quarterback, 304. Roman Wilson at 305. Braylon Allen. I probably would have considered Braylon Allen if he fell to 308, but he goes right there. Then Jalen Polk. I went with Luke McCaffrey at 308. Maybe a little under the radar guy. There's been some buzz. It probably helps that Ed McCaffrey is on NFL radio, so I hear them talk about him a lot. But I've seen some buzz. He could be an interesting guy because of the name where he ends up. You got your boy Will Shipley, so a couple of good running backs for you. Then Malachi Corley at 310, Audric Estime at 311, and Ray Davis going 312 to Colin Decker there. So what stands out to you in the third round?
Yeah, I think there was real good value for Rattler. From where Shipley and Allen were a couple years ago, it's really wild to see them in the third round. For me, I considered Estime, Davis, and Corley all as options when I picked Shipley. But Estime he feels like a power back that almost is going to be like post Achilles Dante Foreman when he comes into the league. I had Shipley ahead of Davis, so I went there. And Corley, he's getting favorably comped to Deebo Samuel. And he's a slot guy. I think we just got to be careful when we're comping players to unicorns. It happens with Derrick Henry. Every time a big back with some speed comes into the league, he's the next Derrick Henry. Every time a 6th-round quarterback flashes, he's the next Tom Brady. I mean, we got to stop comping to unicorns. But I like Shipley. I think he's a guy that could be a 1A. I don't know that he's going to end up being a bell cow. He's got decent size, but he could be a 1A in a platoon or probably more likely a 1B because of his pass catching ability.
Brings us to the last round. Kamani Vidal at 401, Isaiah Davis 402, Jaheim Bell, the third tight end off at 403, then Theo Johnson, Ben Stinnett. So a couple of tight ends go right in a row. Dylan Laub, interesting running back at 406. Then Tez Walker goes 407, right in front of me. I had considered him. As I mentioned, this is a team, I was thinking about a team where I'm desperate for wide receivers, which is a great draft for that. So I take a shot on Brendan Rice. I thought that gives me 4 interesting pass catchers, hopefully land in some good spots. Jermaine Burton goes to you at 9, then Frank Gore Jr. at 10, Cade Stover, the last of the tight ends, and then our final quarterback, Michael Pratt, with the very last pick, 412. And, when you're in the back half of the 4th round, it's a little bit of wish streams. But what stood out to you in this 4th round?
My sadness over not drafting Cade Stover. It's part of my Buckeye love, but also I think Stover is likely going to be better than Sinnott, Johnson, and Bell. He's a good pass blocker, good size, very tenacious. Brendan Rice is an interesting one for me. I do kind of like him. Having Tez Walker fall to the second half of the 4th round feels like he should be higher. Like he had a great 7 or 8 game stretch this year. I know he's got some warts, but I think he's probably a guy I would have drafted over several other people in front of him. I ended up going with Jermaine Burton because I at that point I'm like, I want to dip into the wide receiver group. To me, I can't come away from a draft that's this good at wide receiver and not get one. And while Burton never really, he didn't put up a Devonta Smith or Jamison Williams or Amari Cooper type of Alabama season, he was heralded coming into college. He had 39 catches for 800 yards last year. That's a 20.5 per catch average. He did score 8 touchdowns. And late in the rookie draft, I think I'm looking to take a shot on somebody that can maybe spend a year on my taxi squad and then find his way up as a wide receiver 3, and then by his second season, third season, moves into a wide receiver 2 role. And I think Burton, again, he's got that ideal size, 6 foot, 200, decent speed, decent hands. So that was why I went Burton.
So overall, what did you think of the draft?
I thought it was pretty good. The neighbors pick threw me off a little bit. I got to look a little closer at Javon Baker and Kamani Vidal. Those two are names that I haven't done a ton of work on. I like my draft, but I don't like that I didn't reap any rewards of the high-end wide receiver talent.
Yeah.
Drafting for need the way you did, I think you built like Luke McCaffrey has only played wide receiver for what, 1 year and a half. He played quarterback a lot. McCaffrey is one of those guys that could have a Adam Thielen like ascension.
It just depends
the position.
It depends a little bit to me, like where he goes. But if you see him creep up, into the 4th round, I don't know. I thought it was worth a shot. It was ironic to me because when I came to that pick, I was debating between him and Brendan Rice, and I'm like, YOLO, I'm just going to go with McCaffrey. I've always loved Ed since he played for us here in Denver. And then when it came back around, I was like, hey, Brendan Rice is still there. Yes, my YOLO paid off. Unlike sounds like you had a couple of YOLOs that didn't quite land for you, but I'm going to be curious to see, I'm excited to see these guys land in real spots and then start putting together. It was exciting to think about drafts. We will have another mock draft when we come back on Tuesday. We will do a 1 quarterback league, 3 rounds, 12 teams. Just to be really curious to see how the values of these wide receivers and running backs and tight ends fall when quarterbacks aren't quite as valuable.
Right.
So
I could probably see Pratt and Rattler not getting drafted.
Well, even Nix or Penix may not, it just depends on how, because usually in a 1 quarterback league, everybody keeps, a lot of people keep a second. Sometimes you keep a 3rd developmental guy, but you may not necessarily reach for guys in a rookie draft.
Yeah, they may. Some of the 2nd tier, 3rd tier quarterbacks may probably 4th round quarterback drafts.
Yeah,
more like doing 3. So,
well, we will also talk wide receivers and tight ends when we come back on Tuesday. But Dennis, if people are looking for something to fill up the rest of their weekend, what can they do?
Well, they can go to their favorite podcast platform. Hit that like button, hit that download button, subscribe to us. Let us know that you did. We love that shit. Go leave us a rating and a review. Let's get those numbers boosted. Tell your friends. You remember the old shampoo commercial? They'll tell 2 friends, and they'll tell 2 friends, and they'll tell 2 friends. That's all I'm asking. Just tell 2 friends. They don't even have to listen. Just have them subscribe.
Yeah, the old Matthew Berry. We don't need you to listen, just download for us and subscribe. But if you want to hear more draft talk, we're certainly going to have that in spades as we go into next Tuesday. Looking forward to a great league talk, wide receivers, tight ends, and another mock draft because you know what? Draft day is coming. You guys have a wonderful weekend.